Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. I am your host, Nelson. I know I was a little late at the start of where this stream usually starts, and for those of you on the audio podcast, you won't know the difference. But for those of you watching that then tune into the stream, my apologies for being a little late. I was held up in a meeting, but regardless, let's go right ahead since I am late into the first and second and third segment. So the first segment is going to be about Jrue Holiday's contract extension, and in the second segment we are going to talk about some basketball buzz. That's my segment for the second one, where it's I talk about all the things that are going on in the basketball world, because there's a lot, and it's not much information that we have from them as of right now that could make it into one segment, so I just decided to combine all of it into one segment. And then in the third segment, we have our NBA recap as usual. We also have our fourth segment that I like to reveal at the end of every single third segment, so stay in tune for that. But before I begin, I'd like to remind everybody to please remember to tip and to donate and use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. That is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net. And with that out of the way, we can go right ahead and begin our first segment as we talk about Jrue Holiday and his really fat contract extension. And I say really fat because it's a lot of money that the Celtics plan on giving him. So he has agreed to a 4-year, $135 million contract extension. Now, he joins a very prestige list of LeBron, Steph, and Al Horford of players who have received that amount of guaranteed money at the age that he's at. So Jrue Holiday is one of the much older veterans of the league right now. He's 33 years old, so not really that old, but I guess old in NBA standards, if that makes sense. Usually around the age of 33, that's when you experience a little, but depending on the player you are and the role that you bring, it's once you get around that age, it's your role on the team tends to diminish unless you're really, really good, like LeBron, Steph, Kevin Durant, and all of those other players. But he's one of the older players in the league at the moment. So with that in mind, this contract extension, I was very, very surprised with how much money that the Celtics were willing to give him, especially with the numbers that he's producing throughout the season. Now, I understand that it's not always just about the numbers, but having someone that's averaging 12 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, and 5 assists per game while shooting, let's see, how does he shoot? Let me just see. Okay, 48% from field and 43% from 3. I don't see how that's $135 million. I don't see how it's worth that much for a player of his caliber, because Patrick Beverley, the player he's on the Milwaukee Bucks, the player that essentially was replaced to be the next Jrue Holiday in that sense, because Jrue is a two-way player, which is honestly probably why he got such a ridiculous contract extension. It was due to the fact that he can still play defense rather well, while at the same time still be enough to contribute on the offensive side of the ball for the team. But Patrick Beverley, now he's the backup point guard for the Milwaukee Bucks, being backup to Dame, obviously. But even though he is a backup, he is averaging more points than Jrue Holiday, just as many rebounds as Jrue Holiday, and just as many assists as Jrue Holiday. And if you are a casual and if you are an NBA fan, you know that Patrick Beverley is not worth $135 million. You just know he's not worth that. And the fact that they're averaging similar stats, but Jrue Holiday is getting more money, it's very, very odd, in my personal opinion, because it's you're giving that much money to a role player? Like, was it really that worth it? And it just really confused me. This entire signing. Like, I knew they needed to sign him. Like, I knew they needed to re-sign him. Like, that was the goal, because he is a contributor to the team. But for that much, I don't think he was worth that much. That's just my personal opinion, however. And this is also being a little bit awkward because Jason Tatum is expected to also sign an extension coming to 2024 free agency. He doesn't become a free agent yet. He becomes a free agent in 2026. However, he is eligible to sign another contract, which will in turn give him more money. And seeing as how Jaylen Brown is making more money than Jason Tatum already, Tatum is most likely going to want a lot of money coming in from the Boston Celtics, way more than what they're giving Jaylen Brown, because Jaylen Brown is the second option, yet he's getting paid like a first option. And that might sort of rough Jason Tatum the wrong way a little bit, because it's like, I'm the number one option, yet I'm not getting paid as much as the second option's getting paid. And it might rub him the wrong way, because, like, I mean, I would definitely get rubbed the wrong way if someone who I know I'm better at a game than them is getting more recognition for it than I am, because it's like, that's hard work and dedication. And I'm not saying that Jaylen Brown isn't dedicated to the game, but, and I don't want to criticize him, but his game he's not as ambidextrous as you'd expect a superstar of his caliber and with the amount of money he's getting paid to be. He is not ambidextrous when finishing around the rim whatsoever. And I'm trying to be a little bit nice, because the media did nothing but criticize Jaylen Brown the entirety of the playoffs against the Miami Heat, when every single time Jaylen Brown literally kept losing the ball because his left hand is his weaker hand. And obviously, like, you know, with your left hand being your weaker hand, you're not going to be able to do the same things you could do with your right hand. However, as an NBA player, it's somewhat, at least this age of the game now, it's expected that you can be ambidextrous. Kyrie Irving has sort of set that tone of expectation where it's like he can finish just as good with the left or with the right or the left hand. I said right for my left hand, and then I said left for my right hand because of how the camera's facing me. That's it's ridiculous. People on the podcast won't understand that, but the people watching the stream, they would. But regardless, it's like he's ambidextrous enough to be able to finish around the rim with both hands. And Jaylen Brown, and not only that, he's also competent enough to dribble the ball with both hands. And a lot of NBA players are extremely competent at doing that now. So it was very, very apparent that Jaylen Brown, the second option on the Boston Celtics, was unable to do it as good as some of the other players getting paid less money than him. And that's obviously going to rub people the wrong way, especially a bunch of Celtics fanatics and things of that nature. And it's also going to rub Jason Tatum the wrong way because, again, he is due for a contract extension. So how much money are they willing to give him? Like, how much money are they going to give him? Because Jaylen Brown is on a 5-year, $304 million contract, and it's the biggest contract that in NBA history. And you would never think that someone like Jaylen Brown would have that ridiculous contract. So in the next season, Tatum is going to enter the third year of his 5-year, $163 million contract during the 2024 free agency. So he will also be eligible for a $300 million deal like Jaylen Brown. And obviously, like, you're going to want to take that deal being Jason Tatum. And like, because you are the number one option on that Boston Celtics team, you need that money. It makes sense. However, I know there's going to be a lot of backlash coming from the rest of the media for Jason Tatum being the most paid player in the NBA, because when you look at him from an individual standpoint, there's not really much that he's done in the league. Like, I don't want to be disrespectful to him whatsoever because I think his playoff runs are nothing short of amazing. But when you're looking at accolades and things that, like, a lot of sports fans in the media, like, value, accolades such as the MVP, accolades like Defensive Player of the Year, All-Star selections, All-NBA first teams, second teams, All-Defensive teams, all of that stuff. Jayson Tatum hasn't won a hardware, like, he hasn't won an award that you can touch, I guess you could say. So it's like he hasn't won an All-Star Game MVP. He hasn't won a regular season MVP. And he's always been surrounded by good teams, and he just can't get it done when it matters most. So there's going to be a lot of disrespect coming in from this contract extension if he does end up signing $300 million. And obviously, like, being part of the Boston Celtics, that definitely helps that, like, they can generate that revenue to be able to pay him. But there are other players in the league that I feel should be getting that kind of money. And, like, Jayson Tatum, he should not be the most paid player in the league. Jaylen Brown should also not be the most paid player in the league. If anyone is going to be paid the most money, it's going to be between Luka Doncic, Victor Wembanyama. Those two, like, are just right off the top of my head. Those two deserve every single ounce, every single penny you have just to keep them on the team. That's how much money they deserve. And let's see if I can name any other players that belong on that deserve to make more money than that. I can't really think of any other player like that. And honestly, I'm a little bit crazy for saying Victor that deserves all that money because it's only been one season, and a lot of people might call me crazy for that. But given what I've seen, he's only going to get better. Like, he is only going to get better as a player and as a basketball star. So I think he is already worth that money. Not just because of his offense, but because of his ridiculous defense as well. And he might not win Defensive Player of the Year this year, but he will win a lot of them with the amount of blocks that he gets. And it's honestly like, it's ridiculous how great he is on the defensive side of the ball. And he's not even the number one option to win Defensive Player of the Year. Like, I don't think he's going to win Defensive Player of the Year just because of, like, how the Defensive Player of the Year award is handled. But if it were up to me, I would pick Victor. And let's see. Let's go ahead even though I know that's not going to happen. So I'm just going into the quote because there is some problems with Jayson Tatum and this contract. So, like, obviously, like, Jaylen Brown has helped the Celtics when scoring phenomenon. Like, when Jayson Tatum has been surrounded by too much defensive pressure, makes his life easier. But when asked about Tatum's own upcoming extension, he was very hesitant. And in his own words, he said, "Nah, I don't think about nothing of that. It's one day at a time." So that's something that I feel like a lot of Boston fans should worry about because unlike Klay Thompson, he didn't say, "Yes, I plan on signing an extension or I plan on re-signing." He is uncertain about his future, meaning that he could still, like, be flimsy about, like, his contract and could decide to want out of Boston and search for another team that's willing to pay him that much money. And that's going to be very difficult for him just because I don't really think many teams other than the Boston Celtics are going to be able to pay him that money. And I don't think many teams are going to want to pay him that money because, again, he hasn't done much individually, and in the postseason, he's fallen short a lot of times while having a great team to win. So it's like, if this player as the number one option isn't winning championships and he's asking for this much money, why are we going to pay him this much money if he's just not going to win? So if he wins the championship this season and finally gets over that hump, then he is definitely going to get that contract extension. But if he doesn't, not entirely sure. So I feel like Celtics fans should be a little bit worried about that. But with that, we are out of time for this first segment. So now I will be going into the second segment called Basketball Buzz, where I talk about all the big stories that are going on right now in the, well, not really big stories, but all like the little stories that are going on around in like the NBA and basketball that a lot of fans like really like and are kind of important, but not necessarily important to the season, but just important in basketball world. So I will be right back after this short break.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. Some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
And we are back with the second segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this second segment, we are going to be talking about basketball buzz, so some of the news that's going around in, not necessarily the NBA, but in the basketball world. So it's a little bit of sad news. So like this first one is going to be a little bit of sad news, so I might as well warn you guys before listening, but Nate Robinson, a fan favorite and a dunk contest winner, he's and a former Knick, let's go Knicks, he recently admitted that he doesn't have long to live due to kidney failure. And if he doesn't get that fixed soon, then eventually his time is just going to be up. So that's something that's like a little bit that was the buzz that was going on in the basketball world yesterday. It was really difficult because it's like he knows that there's a high chance that he's not going to make it out, and he just told everyone that on a podcast. It was very, very tough to hear that, considering how much of a fan favorite he is, and it's like you wouldn't really expect someone like him to come out and say that. Like, he desperately needs a kidney in order to survive, and it's like so far he just hasn't, either he hasn't gotten it yet, or it's like I don't know exactly what the buzz around that is, but still it's that his quote is, I know that I don't have long if I can't get a kidney, and I know I'm not going to have long to live, so I just want to make the best of it as much as I can. So prayers up for him and his situation, and hopefully he finds the kidney. And I don't know why he hasn't gotten many any donors or any competent donors for a kidney transplant, but regardless, it's it's really tough. He has been using a dialysis machine, which sometimes can lead to painful vomiting that leaves him hospitalized for a day or two. And despite the side effects, he is thankful for the treatment. Some people's body reject dialysis, and thank God that mine accepts it and I can live. That was the quote that Robinson told the Daily Mail. If I didn't go to dialysis, I wouldn't live probably longer than a week or two. So it's serious. Can't miss a day. I go in for 4 hours, 3 days a week, 4 hours a day, and they clean my blood to get my toxins out, and they help me out a lot because that's how I'm living. So again, it's really tough to dissect, I guess you could say, especially like being a fan of his and like all that he's done for the NBA. I mean, being a 5'9" guard and winning the dunk contest is something that's very, very difficult to do. And seeing him in this state that he's in, not getting any help and not getting any kidney donors, it's really tough because it's like, wow, it's a really cruel world. One day you're at the top, and then the other day, like, bam, you have no idea like what life could do to you and what life could throw at you. So that's the situation around Nate Robinson. Again, I didn't want to make it an entire segment because I just felt like that's just ridiculous to make it an entire segment of me just talking about someone's not being well. So we'll move on to the next story in the basketball world, and that is Ben McLemore, who is now facing, who now just recently got arrested and is facing several different rape charges and sexual abuse charges as well. So the charges are first-degree R-word. I don't want to repeat that word because I don't know how sensitive a lot of people are. An A-level felony with a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. First-degree unlawful sexual penetration. An A-level felony with a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. And 2 counts of second-degree sexual abuse, C-level felonies, each with a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison. So if he's found guilty, it would seem that his entire career is basically over. Now, a lot of people, they would really think like, how do I say this? So a lot of people would think that some of these accusations and these rape accusations on these athletes are made up. Some people think it's made up. Like, a lot of people, when Deshaun Watson was facing 24 sexual assault allegations, some people thought that it was that the women that were involved lied about the encounter. And that same like stipulation, it's sort of, and not only that, but there was also an NFL kicker on the Bulls that I forgot his name, but he was actually accused of sexual assault or the R word. I don't remember exactly what it was. And it was later found out that he wasn't even in the house when that happened. So is this one of those situations? I don't think so. Because Ben McLemore has already been out of the league, and usually these people would make these accusations to ruin the athlete's life while he's still in the league, because they're still making money from the league and they're making a lot of money and they want that money. And like at least that's sort of the perception around these fake accusations. And so because he's already out of the league, I do not think that these allegations are made up. So he might be cooked for the rest of his career. Like this might be it, because it's like you either are found guilty or you're not found guilty. And even when you're not found guilty, like there's still people who are going to think that yes, you are guilty. It's just the way the justice system works that changes people's opinions. But I'm not going to get in too deep into that just because like there are a lot of like legal problems, like if I do say things of that nature. But regardless, it's like, these accusations are out there, and there's definitely going to be a trial. We'll see what the results are, but for now, I'm not going to say that he definitely did it because it wasn't proven. However, the cards are incredibly stacked against him. That I will say. The cards are stacked against him right now. But that doesn't mean that he's, again, innocent until proven guilty. So that doesn't mean that he 100% did it. So that's all I'm going to talk about with that. Now, we're going to move on to Jontay Porter, who, if you remember in the previous segment, he was under investigation for a gambling issue where there were certain tickets that were placed, that a lot of people placed on his under, and he ended up not playing a lot of minutes in that game. So he was under investigation, and now the NBA is thinking of banning him from the entire league for good. And I find it really, really odd how gambling is a capital punishment. Like Adam Silver said himself, it is a capital sin. And I'm just pulling up the quote right now just to make sure that I have all the information that I need. But regardless, it's he could face a permanent ban. And I really don't understand why the ban is permanent. I understand why he needs to get suspended, but I don't get why it's going to be a permanent suspension because, and why it's considered a cardinal sin. Because, again, the league has allowed several NBA players to play in the league despite being, literal criminals. Despite the fact that they are criminals and they do certain things, or they've done certain things that aren't seen as good in the public eye and the public perception, they still allow them to make money in the league, and they still allow them to be a part in the league. The NFL does the same thing as well. It's more common in the NFL than it is in the NBA, however. But regardless, it's I find it very odd how he would call this a capital punishment, but wouldn't call other things a capital punishment, like the issue with surrounding Josh Giddey and how sketchy that situation is. I'm not going to get into that situation just because it's it's a really difficult topic to talk about without getting into big trouble. But regardless, it's cardinal sin, is it really that deep? I don't think it's that deep. But Silver said, I have an enormous range of discipline available to me, but it's a cardinal sin what he's accused of in the NBA, and the ultimate extreme option I have is to ban him from the game. That's the level of authority I have here, because there's nothing more serious, I think, around this league when it comes to gambling, betting on our games, and that is a direct player involvement. And so the investigation is ongoing, but the consequences could be very severe. So, and another thing that I also find odd is how a lot of these sports and a lot of these leagues, they advertise these gambling sites, yet they don't allow their players to be a part of the gambling. And obviously, I understand why. It's because of, you can't have players bet on their own games and just throw the games. That would just affect the entirety of the season and everything, and all sorts of things and things of that nature. And there's a lot of problems that come with it. However, it's why advertise them if you are strongly against your own players using it? That's just my 2 cents. But with that, that's all the basketball buzz that's going around in the basketball world. So now we're going to go into the third segment where I talk about all the NBA games that went down last night, as well as some some of the big stories that went down off of these games as well. So I will be right back after this short break.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
And we are back with the third segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this third segment, we're going to be doing our recap of all the NBA games that went down last night. So we'll start with the important one, and the important one is the Suns were able to beat the Clippers in the next matchup. So they won 124-108. Now, there was no James Harden, no Kawhi Leonard, no Russell Westbrook, and no Paul George in this matchup, which is honestly the only reason why I think the Phoenix Suns were able to win in this game, because there was no perimeter defenders that were good enough to stop Devin Booker or Kevin Durant, and there was not enough scoring coming in to be able to stop either of them as well. So Devin Booker had a much better game tonight with 37 points on 13 of 24 shooting. Bradley Beal also had a good game tonight, 26 points, and Kevin Durant ended the game with 24 points. So the big three, they performed, but at the same time they performed against a Clippers team that was lacking in a lot of key players. And so the entire bench was basically out in the starting lineup. But however, Bones ended the game with 37 points and 9 assists, so great performance coming in from him. Just wasn't enough for the high-powered offense that the Suns had, because Devin Booker essentially matched his 37 points, effectively canceling it out. And the rest of the starters for the Clippers, they couldn't provide the scoring boost that they needed. Amir Coffey ended the game with 11 points. Mason Plumlee ended the game with 12 points and 12 rebounds. PJ Tucker ended the game with 10 points. And off the bench, Brandon Boston Jr. ended the game with 23 points and 7 rebounds. And that was essentially all the scoring that happened in this game for this Clippers team. So obviously not having any of their star players affected them dramatically. And the Suns, I don't even want to give the Suns credit for this win, because it's against a team that doesn't even have all of their players. So we could put a little asterisk on that with for the Phoenix Suns. With this win coming in from Phoenix, this effectively locks the Lakers and Golden State in the play-in tournament. So now there's nothing that the Lakers can do to get out of the play-in situation. So they're going to be forced to play at least 2 play-in games. And that's obviously that's not ideal, considering how you're going to play 2 play-in games just to match up against the Denver Nuggets. if they continue staying at the 9th seed. Now, if they move up to the 8th seed, then there's a high chance that they won't have to play the Nuggets. They will have to play a team like the Timberwolves or the Thunder, depending on how the standings end. Again, it's like the Nuggets still haven't clinched the 1 seed yet. But since we are talking about the Timberwolves and the Nuggets, might as well talk about their matchup from last night. I watched a majority of that game, and the Timberwolves, they were struggling on the offensive side of the ball, and they were really missing Karl-Anthony Towns' production, who is expected to return in the lineup as soon as this weekend. So Timberwolves fans rejoice for that. But Rudy Gobert ended the game with 13 points and 15 rebounds. Anthony Edwards ended the game with 25 points. Naz Reid ended the game with 13, and Mike Conley ended with 19. However, Jokic ended with 41, 11, and 7. Jamal Murray ended with 20, and Michael Porter Jr. ended with 18. And that was basically all she wrote for this game. Jokic shot 16 of 20 from the field, a highly efficient 41-point game coming in from him, especially with Rudy Gobert being that center on the team and expected to guard him. So, which is another argument as to why Rudy Gobert, or like a lot of people don't think Rudy Gobert should be the defensive player of the year because of how often he gets outplayed by Jokic. But a lot of people forget how good Jokic really is. So it's kind of unfair to put that against him because when Jokic is on the floor, chances are he's going to have a dominant night regardless. Even though there are other centers like Ivica Zubac that are able to put a stop to him and all of his offense. But that's a whole different story. But this game was highly anticipated if you were the Timberwolves. Anthony Edwards said that this was a very important game, but Nikola Jokic thought that it wasn't that much of an important game. Obviously, you would think that that's not much of an important game. It's Jokic. And speaking of Victor Wembanyama, they're actually going to match up against each other tomorrow in the next matchup. So if Jokic ends up scoring fewer points, all because of Victor's presence, maybe that'll be enough for a lot of voters to be convinced that Victor is also a defensive player of the year. But again, I don't really think that's going to happen because, again, Rudy Gobert has shown a lot of value for his defense over the years. And it's not like he doesn't deserve the defensive player of the year. It's really not. A lot of people think that he doesn't deserve it and it should be Victor, but he really does, given what he's doing with the Timberwolves. He's literally just copying what he did on the Utah Jazz. You can't, it's not a coincidence. It just can't, it's too good of a coincidence for it to, for him to not have an impact, if that makes enough sense. So looking at the rest of the games, I'm just trying to figure out exactly what game I want to cover next. And so the Dallas Mavericks, they ended up beating the Miami Heat 111-92. Jimmy Butler ended the game with only 12 points. Tyler Hero ended with 21. Caleb Martin ended with 14. And Bam Adebayo only ended with 8. So pretty disappointing performance coming in from the Heat. Jimmy Butler took only 8 shots for some reason. I don't understand why he didn't take more shots, but I mean, I know the media is just going to be like, playoff Jimmy, the second he gets in the playoffs and has a couple of good games. Bam Adebayo shot 3 of 13 from the field, so that wasn't really that good either. And Tyler Hero shot 6 of 15 from the field. Again, not really that good. Now, looking at the situation for the Miami Heat, they look like they're going to be in the play-in tournament as of right now. They just dropped down to the 8th seed, and the Sixers, they're creeping up to that 6th seed. It's bound to happen. If the Pacers, if they end up losing a game, it might happen. But the Miami Heat, they look to be in the play-in spot, and it doesn't really seem like they're going to make it out, assuming that all the teams they win what they need to win. But this was a much-needed win for the Miami Heat that they just didn't end up getting. And now on the Mavericks side, Luka Doncic ended the game with 29, 9, and 9. Kyrie Irving ended the game with 25, 4, and 3. And the rest of the starting lineup ended with 12 points, and that was good enough to be able to beat the Miami Heat, who are known for having a relatively good defense. And now, with all of these wins that the Mavericks are getting, and all of these, again, these are really good wins that the Mavericks are getting, and the fact that they're getting these wins, it's bringing the attention to the media that Luka and Kyrie Irving might be the best duo in the NBA right now, aside from Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic. I give Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray that nod because they literally just won a championship. So with that in mind, the fact that they're the best duo in the league, it's very, very surprising, especially since it's Kyrie Irving. Like, Kyrie, he's had a lot of issues with the locker room previously, but those issues haven't been brought up once when he's on the Dallas Mavericks. And it's really like he's really shown everyone just how valuable of a player he really is and how good he really is, especially when paired up with Luka. So I thought that this duo wouldn't work with the squad that they had and the lack of defense that they had, but they've so far proven me wrong. Now, they look to be matched up against the Clippers in the first round, which might be bad news for this team because this Clippers team, not this Clippers team in particular, but the Clippers, they seem to always beat Luka Doncic in the first round. Like, every single time they seem to beat him. And it doesn't matter how well Luka performs. They just always beat him. And Kawhi almost always shows up in those games. And it's like, is it going to happen again? We'll see. Maybe this will be the year where they finally get over the Clippers. Because the one time that they didn't play the Clippers in the playoffs, they made it relatively far. And they made a really deep run. However, playing the Clippers, they lost in the first round every single time. So it's very interesting matchup. And we'll see how it goes. But next on this on the list of games, the Nets end up beating the Raptors, a relatively unimportant game because, again, these are two bottom-feeding teams, and these teams have already been eliminated from playoff contention, so there was no real need to really talk about this game. Again, both teams were eliminated, so, why would I even bother? But regardless, it's, it's a win. As a Nets fan, it's a win. A win is a win. So I'll take it. But still, it's couldn't have started winning earlier. But I digress. So the Cavs, they ended up playing the Memphis Grizzlies, and they ended up winning 110-98. They really need to get back onto that winning mindset now that they have Donovan Mitchell, because they've sort of let a couple of games loose. And they play the Pacers tomorrow. So depending on if the Pacers win or if they lose, it could have drastic implications on the playoffs and who they would end up playing. Because right now, the Cavs are the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference, and they could take the 3rd seed if, the Knicks end up losing. And if they do take the 3rd seed, then they'll be matched up against the Sixers if the Sixers win out. There's a lot of scenarios that could still go down, so it's really difficult to sort of pinpoint exactly what's going to happen in this Eastern Conference. And usually I can do that relatively early, but it's so close that I just can't. So Jarrett Allen, he ended the game with 16 and 10. Donovan Mitchell ended the game with 29. Darius Garland ended the game with 16 and 9. And I feel like Darius Garland is really going to have to step up in the playoffs if the Cavs have any chance of making it out. And Evan Mobley ended the game with 12 points and 12 rebounds. And that was basically all the important scoring. Oh, never mind. Karis LeVert ended the game with 18 points coming off the bench. And that was the scoring for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, on the Grizzlies, Jake LaRavia, ended the game with 32 points and played 40 minutes, which is honestly insane. And let's see. Jaren Jackson Jr., no, not Jaren Jackson, Gigi Jackson, pardon me, forgive me for that, ended the game with 22 points and Scottie Pippen Jr. ended the game with 18 points. Now, in this Cavs game, something funny relatively happened, and the Cavs broadcast team had no idea who a player was, and his name was Timmy Allen, and he's a rookie in the NBA. He just got drafted last year, and the broadcast team literally had no idea who he was. And I really feel like that's disrespectful, because imagine you're him. Like, imagine you work so hard to make it to the NBA, and then the broadcast team just says, "Who is this guy?" Like, that is so disrespectful. And it's like, how do they not have a list of all the players that are on the roster ready and available for them? Like, how do they not have that? I think that was a very, very bad job by the broadcasting crew. I really wouldn't be surprised if some of them got fired afterwards, because that was an incredibly disrespectful joke. And they literally put question marks around his name, question marks around his stats, when all of that can be found on Google. Like, I genuinely don't understand why they did that. That was incredibly disrespectful. And that was really the biggest story in this game. So, next game on the list is the Charlotte Hornets beating the Atlanta Hawks. Now, the Atlanta Hawks, they got Trae Young back from an injury. He ended the game with 14 points and 11 assists. Doesn't sound like much. However, he only took 5 shots and made all 5 of his shots, also making all of his free throws. So he shot 100% from the field while at the same time getting 11 assists. So while they did end up losing, it wasn't Trae Young's fault. I mean, how can you fault him for not missing a shot and getting 11 assists? You literally just can't. Now, Vit Krejcik ended the game with 19 points. And forgive me if I botched that last name. I have no idea how to pronounce it. Bogdan Bogdanovic ended the game with 19 points. Clint Capella ended with 15. And there was no DeJounte Murray in this game. Now, despite that, the Hornets, they ended up winning 115-114. Brandon Miller ended the game with 27 points. And Brandon Miller, he's really fun to watch. Like, he thinks the best player ever is Paul George, and if you really watch him play, you can see like a lot of his moves are like copied from Paul George, and I really think it's really cool to see, and it's kind of nostalgic. But Trey Mann ended the game with 16 points, 7 steals, and 7 assists. And let's see, who else was scoring? Grant Williams ended the game with 16 points, and that was basically all the scoring that came in from Charlotte. And they were able to get this win. Again, it's not really an important win because they've already been eliminated and the Hawks are already locked in the play-in. So, you take what you can get, I guess. But regardless, moving on, the Bucks ended up beating the Orlando Magic in a blowout win. I seriously do not understand how they just play better with Damian Lillard and without Giannis. I really don't, but it's a weird trend. Bobby Portis ended the game with 30 points and 9 rebounds. Damian Lillard ended the game with 29 points and 9 assists. And Patrick Beverley ended the game with 13. Brook Lopez ended with 10. Jay Crowder ended with 14. And that was essentially like all the important scoring. Bobby Portis shot 14 of 18 from the field. And these guys, they really know how to win when Damian Lillard's on the court. But it's just when they put Giannis and Dame together, they can't. And I don't understand why, because on paper it should work. Now, the Magic, they've been on a little bit of a slump with these games. Like Cole Anthony, he ended the game with 23 points. Paolo Banchero ended the game with only 20 points. And Jalen Suggs ended the game with 18 points. And the rest of the players shot pretty poorly for the Orlando Magic. So, a lot of difficulties there for the Magic. And not a good time, too. Especially since, the Bucks don't have Giannis. And they're expected to play in the playoffs. And here they are losing. Last game on this list is the Spurs going up against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, the Thunder, they ended up winning, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander ended the game with 26 points. Chet ended the game with 9. Jalen Williams ended the game with 10. And that was essentially all of the scoring that came in, like all the big scoring that came in from OKC. This was much more of a team win than anything else, as everybody on the box scores ended up scoring at least 1 point, except for 2 other people. Now, on the Spurs, since they did not have Victor Wembanyama in this game, obviously they weren't going to win by that much. And Not really much that needs to be said because it's a bottom-feeding team going up against a top team in the Western Conference. So with that, that's the end of the recap, and we are out of time for this third segment. So now I will go into the fourth segment where I'm going to probably go on a little bit of a rant about Ben Simmons because of the Nets' intentions with him. So I will be right back after this short break.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we're going to talk about Ben Simmons, public enemy number one, for me at least. So the Brooklyn Nets have recently just revealed that they plan on keeping Ben Simmons and sticking with him for the next season. Like, they have not given up hope on him like I've given up my hope. So they're going to plan on sticking with him for the rest of the season. And I cannot help but ask, why? Why? Why would we bother keeping Ben Simmons? I genuinely do not understand why. Of all the NBA players in the league, he is by far my least favorite. Like, hands down, my least favorite basketball player. And why? Because he just doesn't want to play. He doesn't want to win. He doesn't want to do anything. He wants to live the NBA lifestyle without playing an NBA game. And I just cannot stand it whatsoever. Because he doesn't even seem really in any kind of rush to try to return from injury whatsoever. Like, I understand he has, like, these back problems and things of that nature, but wouldn't you, like, he shows no sign of wanting to return. And on top of that, it's the fact that he even has back problems that it's just making me question, why are we going to bother sticking with a guy that is injury prone and hasn't played enough games to even be, like, considered reliable? Of the 246 games he could have played since June 2021, he's only played in 57 of them. 246 games, and only played in 57 of them. He's also the most fined player in NBA history, as when he was on the Sixers, he was intentionally missing practice, intentionally missing games, because he didn't want anything to do with the Sixers organization. He essentially quit on them, all because they quit on him. And it's that mentality that just immediately made me sour my opinion with him. Because if it was anyone else in this league, they would take that criticism and they would use that to try to make themselves better. But throughout the entirety of his career, he hasn't done that. So, and not to mention, at the start of his career, he was being compared to LeBron James. He was being compared to Magic Johnson. These are Hall of Famers. And a lot of Ben Simmons defenders, they're like, oh, he's trying his best, this of that nature. No, if he was trying his best, he would already be on the caliber of LeBron. Like, he would still be considered the next LeBron. But now he's not because of all the problems that were happening in Philly. He was the sole reason, along with Doc Rivers, the sole reason why the Sixers couldn't find any success in the postseason for the time he was there. In his rookie year, he was seen as this elite level talent that literally only lacked a shot. And Kobe Bryant even warned him that he needs to get a jump shot. If he doesn't get a jump shot, then he's going to regret it for the rest of his life. And look at where he is right now, completely regretting it for the rest of his life. So, and he said if he gets a jump shot, it would be a serious, serious problem. And he just didn't bother. Like, we would see him in an open gym shooting the ball around and acting as if, like, oh, he could shoot. Oh, my God, it's going to be a dangerous season. But then once he goes into an NBA game, he doesn't shoot the ball. And it's like, why? I don't understand. And it's like, I understand it's because, like, he apparently, like, he doesn't have a shot. But when you see him in an open gym, he's more than confident enough to shoot the rock. So I don't understand why he hasn't built on that confidence yet. As a number 1 draft pick, that is expected. If that is a major problem in your game, you do something to fix it. And he hasn't done anything. He's been the same player since day one. And I'm not saying that player was bad, because he was bringing, honestly, like, very good production. He was a great defender. He was a great passer. He was a great rebounder. He was a great finisher around the rim. All of these things, but he just lacked the jumper. And he was still dominating without the jumper. So, like, just imagine what he could have done if he had a jump shot. And what makes his story even worse is because players like Lonzo Ball, he was also a very high pick in the draft, and he was also criticized for his funky-looking jump shot and the fact that he was just missing very, very badly and he couldn't shoot as consistently as he did on UCLA. Instead of, pouting and, like, crying and all of that drama, he got in the gym and he worked. And he completely changed his shooting form and his shooting motion to the point where now he shoots 44% from 3. Like, that is a ridiculous improvement from someone who is considered as not a good shooter. Like, he's shown that if you put time and dedication and hard work into your craft, you can be a shooter if you just work hard enough, if you work hard like he did. And with Lonzo Ball working as hard as he did, I'm like, why didn't Ben Simmons work this hard? And it's the only answer that I can legitimately come up with is because he doesn't want to. And I'm thinking in my head, why wouldn't you want to? You are a 6'10" power forward that can play the point guard that was compared to LeBron, and all you had to do was learn how to shoot. Why didn't you bother taking time? Why? I don't understand. And it's like, you don't have to start, like, immediately, like, with the jump shot. You could at least, like, work on your free throws first, which was also a major problem in the postseason. Of all the players that took 70-plus free throws in the playoffs, he, by far, has the absolute worst percent. He shot worse than Shaq from the free throw line, which is really, really, really bad. Because Shaq is notorious for being a horrible free throw shooter. You ask anyone, and he will say it, players will say it, casuals will say it, professionals will say it, everyone will say that he was not a good free throw shooter. And that was clearly, like, an aspect of his game that a lot of people abused in the playoffs. They just sent him to the line. It was a genuine problem, and he didn't even bother to fix it. I just don't understand why he didn't bother to fix it, because I'm not going to say it's an easy fix, because shooting in an open gym is incredibly different than shooting in front of thousands of spectators. Not even millions of spectators, because I wasn't counting the ones on TV. I was just counting the ones in the stands. But regardless, that is a lot of people and obviously that's going to bring a lot of pressure. So I get how, like, it's going to be a difficult process, but he's not making it any easier on himself by not working. And again, when I see players like Lonzo Ball in the gym working and actually improving on their shot, it just infuriates me, because he could do that too if he just puts his mind to it. He just doesn't. And it's like, it's a waste of his height. It's a waste of his talents. It's a waste of everything about his build because, again, 6'10" point guard that can do everything on the court except shooting. That is, and even play defense at such an elite level. That's why Lonzo was taken so high in the draft, because he was able to shoot, he was able to play make, he was also tall enough to be able to play defense. Like, that is a very, very valuable player to have. And it just, I really don't understand why. And it was actually talked about in scouting reports way before he got drafted that it really didn't seem like he had any sort of drive to win. And now it's just like more apparent now. And I just don't understand like why this is the case. I really do not. And it's just really, really, really annoying, especially being a Nets fan, because why are we sticking with someone who doesn't even want to play the sport? Why are we sticking with someone who's still too injured to want to play the sport? I don't understand why we're bothering to do that. Like, we really, and I don't know. It's just, the Nets and their organization, they make a lot of questionable decisions, and this is by far one of their most questionable decisions, along with trading for Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. That is, like, I just don't understand. I genuinely don't. But that's basically the end of my rant, and that's the end of the fourth segment. So with that, that is the end of the podcast. So thank you for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show, leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. And before I end off, I'd like to remind everybody to please use the link in the description or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment to get your comments recognized. Again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show more interactive between myself and you guys. Once again, the link is gsmcpodcast.net. That is the end of the podcast. That's the end of the show. Thank you once again. I am your host, Nelson. And as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit.